as you grow as a founder, you have to be a developer of talent. You have to be able to identify people who want more out of life and that your business can be the answer to that question. And then you have to be able to put them in roles where they can excel, because you will not be able to do it all yourself. You will not be able to go it alone.
Okay, so you're starting your business, or you've been in your business operating, and maybe you're at a point where you're struggling and it's just feeling like it's too difficult. You can't see beyond the trees in front of you. It's a mess out there. It's a jungle. You've walked outside, there's stuff everywhere. It's overgrown. Where do you go? Where do you get clarity? Well, the good thing is that you don't have to do this alone. We've brought in the expert with the heavy equipment, the tools to make you go forward. I'm talking about Bryan Clayton, who's the CEO of GreenPal, or your GreenPal. He's been in your shoes. And he is going to share with us a great story of his journey from starting a business with just himself and a push mower to now having a business that serves over 300,000 homeowners as a trusted lawn care professionals in the US, turning over $30 million a year. So how do you go from a business where it's just you and a mower to a business turning over $30 million? I think that's enough to get everybody excited. I know I'm excited. Bryan, welcome to the Business Behind Your Business.
Paul, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Look, it's a pleasure. And look, I love hearing from people like yourself who have gone through that struggle of just starting with basically the bare minimum. And then you've taken that picture, that vision, and suddenly, well, not suddenly, there's a bit of a journey there, but you now at the position, you're CEO of a company turning over $30 million and providing a benefit to 300,000 people, which is certainly beyond what one guy in a mower can do. So let's go back right to the beginning and find out, well, what were you thinking when you got outside, you unpacked the mower and said, right, let's mow some lawns? What were you thinking at that point?
Yeah, it's kind of funny looking back. That was 25 years ago that I started my first business, just mowing the neighbor's yard. And back then I didn't want to have to wear the cheap soccer cleats because my teammates on my soccer team made fun of me. And so it would I needed some cash to buy some decent cleats. And that was the reason why I mowed the neighbor's yard. And I had a chip on my shoulder because of that. And what I came to find out was that chip on my shoulder kind of carried me through the first 2 or 3 levels of the game building that business. I heard a quote that chips on shoulders put chips in pockets. And for me, it was definitely the kick in the butt to get started. And one of the things that I realized growing that first business was that running your own business is like this evolutionary process, almost like a video game where you're working different levels of the game, and the reason why you're in the game changes as time goes on. And that's how it was for me. I remember hiring my first 2 or 3 employees, and I think one of them had kids, and I thought to myself, wait a second, if I screw this up, there's a family that isn't going to be able to put food on the table, and so I better start listening to mentors and reading books and trying to figure out how I can grow this business so I can create opportunities for people working with me on this thing. And so like the reason why I got started and the reason why I ultimately ended up selling the business were very different. And the person I became along that journey was a totally different person. That's one of the best things about running your own businesses is you get to be a part of this evolutionary process of personal development. I don't know of any other thing that you could do with your life for personal development and feedback than running a business. And so that's why I started it. But after 15 years and growing it to 150 people and then getting it acquired, it became bigger than me. And the reason why I did it was not for me. It was for the people that worked in the business. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, so we've got some big jumps in your journey there. Well, it seems like some big stages. So we've gone from yourself, one man and a lawnmower, hiring 3 to 4 employees, then you've got a business with 150 employees, and now you've got a business with 30 million turnover. There's some significant jumps there. And I think a lot of business owners, when they're starting, they really panic when they're hiring their first employee. So you've come to a point where you're hiring three employees. Suddenly they're very dependent on you maintaining your income It's a big change from the guy that was started mowing lawns just to pay for some soccer gear.
Yeah, totally. And like we mentioned in our discussion before the podcast was that nobody teaches us how to run a small business. And so you hear that you're supposed to hire employees. Oh, maybe I need to hire some employees. And the problem is you really have to think through that, and you have to do that correctly. And I did it all wrong. I was throwing bodies at problems. And I woke up one day and I couldn't make payroll. And I think every small business owner probably faces this at some point. And when that happens is because you made a mistake at some point in time. And the reality is if you're going to hire employees, you have to think about like what your org chart looks like, even if it's just you and maybe a helper. Because if you don't think that through, then you've got 4 or 5 people all doing the same thing. And you want to get to a point where you've got like an org chart and it's your name on 9 out of the 10 roles, but then you've got one person doing a specific job that you've hired them for. And as time goes on, you get to peel your name off of some of these roles. And if you can kind of build it out that way and hire employees because you're delegating certain tasks to them rather than trying to just get help, that can help save you a lot of headache. And it can help you save that nightmare of not being able to go to bed on a Sunday night because you don't have enough money in the bank to make payroll the next morning. I've been there.
I think it's a fairly common situation. A lot of business owners have found themselves in the situation of not being able to make payroll. And look, some people don't panic as much because they just draw on borrowings from the home loan. But after a while, that becomes quite a dangerous situation if you keep depending on that and not actually addressing the core problem. How did you go about addressing that issue of struggling to make payroll and moving from just you being the business to running a business with employees? There's a bit of a change in, I guess, a complete change in thinking, because suddenly it's not just you. You're responsible, as you mentioned, for the livelihood of families working for you.
Totally. Yeah. You made a real good point there that a lot of times, rather than not making payroll, business owners will just go borrow money. And there is no shortage of predatory lenders that will loan you money at high interest rates. And you probably got unsolicited emails from or messages on LinkedIn, but people wanting to loan you all kinds of money. And next thing you know, not only do you have a business that's not profitable, but you also owe a bunch of money. And so now this business is no longer a vehicle that can take you places in life. The business is literally like a chain around your neck. And so the reality is you need to use debt wisely, and nobody teaches us as business owners how to do this either. And we hear that we're supposed to be leveraging debt, but we don't understand that a lot of times the debt can paper over fundamental problems that exist in the business, like why it is we can't make payroll. And so the way I look at it is don't take on debt unless you wouldn't mortgage your mother's home to fund the next stage of the business. Look at it that seriously. You know exactly how you're going to put that money to work to get you to the next level, and it's not something as a short-term band-aid because there's fundamental problems in the business. So if you can think about it that way, it can save you some sleepless nights. And for me, when I was growing my first business, and now when I'm growing GreenPal, I think I take hiring very, very, very seriously, because you are signing up to be responsible for that person's livelihood. And if you can't deliver on the growth that person's going to bring into the business, and you can't give them the opportunities to grow with the business, then you've done them a disservice. And so that's the way I think about it. Is not necessarily I need somebody to help me with a specific thing. It's here's where the business is going, and here's how this person fits into that, and here's how we're going to execute, and here's how we're gonna score if we're successful on this or not. And the other thing is hiring, but also firing quickly if it's not a good fit. You're not doing them a favor if you keep them on too long, and you're not doing your other coworkers a favor either. And that's every time I've ever let somebody go, it was too late. And I still make that mistake. So taking this very, very, very seriously, particularly your first hire, is a make or break decision for any small business.
So A couple of things there. You mentioned having to make the decision to get advice because nobody teaches you how to run a business. You don't learn it in high school. You don't learn it at college. You don't learn it at university. You can register a business without having to do any formal training on how to run a business. You made a conscious decision to learn from some of the mentors, some of the business experts out there. How did that change your thinking from creating just volume of work so that you could pay your employees to actually growing the business?
For me, it was paranoia. It was, okay, I don't know how to do the things that I need to be doing to get to the next level of the game. And a lot of times as the founder of a business, you are kind of block and tackling for whatever parts of the business need to be shored up. And so in the beginning with my landscaping company and even now today with GreenPal, you're kind of moving around to where the business needs the most help. So it could be operations in the beginning. It could be the management. It could be the actual execution of the service. But then as time goes on, you realize, okay, I'm not actually in the lawn care business. I'm in the sales business. And I have to figure out a sales system at the core of this thing. And I've never done that. I've never written copy. I've never ran a sales process. I've never done prospecting. And so then you kind of realize you don't know the first thing on how to do any of this. And so then you start just grasping for any sort of resource you can. And that becomes like your part-time job in a sense. I think in business, you need to be doing three things at all times. You're working in the business, just making sure it runs properly. Then you're working on the business. You're developing the sales, the systems, the processes. In this case, developing a sales system would be working on the business. And then the third thing is you're working on yourself. I don't know how to sell, or at least at that point in time, I didn't. So I started picking up every book I could on developing a repeatable sales process. And after about 3 years, I got pretty good at prospecting and identifying how we were different than our competitors and pitching new business and closing that business. And then I was able to teach it in a repeatable process to somebody else. And I think you have to be doing all of those things at the same time, at all times, maybe to different degrees. Maybe when you first get started, Monday through Friday is in the business, Saturday is on the business, and then Sunday is on yourself. But then maybe after a few years, 5 or 6 years, you can invert that. Maybe one day a week is in the business, and the rest of the time is higher leverage things. That's kind of the way I experienced it.
So a couple of things there you mentioned. I really enjoy hearing that you're working on yourself as well as the business, because a lot of business owners neglect looking after themselves, and you end up in a situation where you can't help anybody because you're just constantly tired, harassed, frazzled, and you're not able to contribute. So you can't work on the business because you can't work on yourself. You mentioned growing and learning the skills to sell and market, and then teaching that to somebody else. So there's two things there, and we might unpack both of them if we can. You learnt the skills first. You didn't go out and hire somebody to do that for you. How was that helpful? But also, how was it an issue in terms of growing the business?
Great question. So I did it the wrong way first, which is how you just described it. I did not want to do cold calling. I did not want to go sit in the lobby somewhere and wait for the manager to ask them when the contract renews and if we could please submit a price. And I did not want to do any of those things. So I just wanted to pay somebody else to do it. And I tried that for years. And then I would do that wrong. I would hire a person that had industry experience because I thought this industry that I was in was so mysterious and hard to figure out, and I wanted to hire somebody away from my competitors, and that was the wrong way to do it. And what I eventually came to understand was that I had to do it myself for a period of time, and in that case a couple of years, and figure out what was the process that worked and what was the system that I had kind of developed around my business that I could prove worked. And only in doing it myself could I then codify it into something that I could teach. And then when I got decent enough to be able to teach it, then I did all of that wrong. I would try to, again, hire somebody with industry training. And what I came to understand was that actually you're just better off hiring somebody who is a motivated, driven individual who wants something more out of life, and your business could be the answer to that. And then teach them the industry and teach them your sales process. That was the winning formula, rather than trying to hire somebody who worked for a competitor or something like that. So anytime I've ever tried to delegate something that I did not do for a period of time myself, it always blew up in my face. And I learned that the hard way growing my first business. And then I've learned it again growing my second business, GreenPal, in terms of all sorts of things I didn't know how to do, software engineering and software design and things like that. And so I would just try to hire somebody to do it, and then they would screw it all up, do it all wrong. And then I'd have to go take a step back, go to YouTube University, take 6 months, learn how to do it myself for a while, and then delegate it from a position of strength.
So you learned a few things there. So one is actually understanding what's involved in each of those, I guess, key areas of the business, those key skills, which I think then once you've established an understanding, you're able to identify the right kind of person you needed in your team.
Exactly.
The other thing I love, and you mentioned this earlier, you talked about having an org chart where you were constantly rubbing out your name off that. A number of years ago, one of our earlier guests mentioned that they deliberately set out and they wrote their org chart, and I think they had 50 roles that they came up with and wrote their name against every one, and they had a plan to remove their name against each of those roles over time, which was great to hear you saying that as well, because I think it's a great concept that as a business owner, you don't want to be controlling everything. I think a lot of, particularly, I guess, older males, my generation over 50, like to hang on to the control of their business and be involved in every decision. But the way you've approached it, you've created a process where you can hire the right people, which then helps you grow your business.
Absolutely. You will never be able to build something all by yourself of any sort of value or impact. I heard a good quote the other day that greatness is in the agency of others. And so the more that you can develop talent around you and identify hidden talent. One of the best hires I ever made was a guy that was working as a sandwich maker at a Jersey Mike's sandwich shop. And he ended up being a great operations manager for my last company. And just because I went there a lot and realized that this particular location was just run better and cleaner and more efficient and organized, had better service than the other sandwich shops that I had been to. And so I hired him from that business and to work on my mission. And so as you grow as a founder, you have to be a developer of talent. You have to be able to identify people who want more out of life, and that your business can be the answer to that question. And then you have to be able to put them in roles where they can excel, because you will not be able to do it all yourself. You will not be able to go it alone. Now, that doesn't mean that you just delegate everything day one, because a lot of founders hear that advice and then they think, okay, yeah, that means I just need to hire a bunch of people and then I won't have to do any of this crappy work because I can just pay somebody else to do it. That's not what I'm saying. You have to do it all yourself to a degree and for a certain period of time until you can kind of codify your process, and then delegate it. Is how you build out a team around you, and you just rinse and repeat. That org chart with 50 roles and your name is on every single one of them. As time goes on, you're peeling away some of those roles and delegating it to freelancers, contractors, employees where you need a full-time person. It's a repeatable process that you can execute against that makes sense, rather than just saying, okay, well, I need a sales. We need to develop. We need to grow. So I guess I need to hire a salesperson. So let me just hire somebody off of Indeed and hope it works out. That's not going to work out for you.
So one of the things I'm picking up here, Bryan, is that over time you've come to a realization that the next stage of growth isn't just going to happen. You've taken some very deliberate actions there. So we talked about hiring your first 3 or 4 employees, but you grew that business to 150 employees. What was the major step that you took in your thinking to move from small number of employees to 150 employees?
It was for me, I really just wanted to build something that had some kind of scale where the people I was bringing on could have some sort of future and some sort of opportunity to grow with the business. And just that one kind of concept was the kind of the force that took me from 5, 10, 15 people to ultimately 150 people. And the company's still running today, and they have several hundred people. And if you can think about it that way, it's like, okay, I'm going to hire this person as a technician, or I'm going to hire them as an assistant, but I really want them to be making 6 figures in the next 3 years. And so for me to do that, I have to execute against this growth roadmap. And for you to be able to give your people a bright future with your mission, you have to grow. And you have to grow to some kind of scale. And so just that simple thing was kind of the force behind it. Like I said, in the early days, I was just trying to make enough money to buy the things I wanted to make. But after hiring my 3rd person, I realized, oh wow, this is bigger than me, and I better take this seriously, or else this person's not going to have any kind of future with what it is we're doing here.
Yeah. So you've done that quite successfully because you grew it to 150 people. The company was acquired. So that doesn't happen without some good planning, but even better execution over time. Now, the time frame from start to when you sold that business, I think that was 15 years?
About right, yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't happen instantly. So a lot of business owners are probably thinking, all right, my time frame is 3 years, 5 years. I've got to grow it from 0 to 150 employees, and then I'm out of there in 3 years. But the reality is it's going to take time to learn from those mistakes. And as Bryan's mentioned, you do make mistakes as a business owner.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that we're sold in the business press and in the movies. In fact, every movie I've ever seen about entrepreneurship, the part where they're actually building the business is set to like a musical montage. And it's like the movie The Social Network, if that was an actual movie, it would have been like 10 hours of Mark Zuckerberg just coding alone in his dorm room. Entrepreneurship is not a sexy, fun thing to watch. And so it's important to understand that when you're just getting started, and when you're picking a business idea, for heaven's sakes, pick one that you want to work in for a decade, because that's how long it's going to take. It's going to take 2 or 3 years just kind of get pointed in the right direction, 2 or 3 years to get some kind of traction, another 3 years to get some kind of growth, and then another 3 years to get some maturity around the business. There just aren't any overnight successes. Anytime you think you see one, really kind of dig into it, you'll realize it took 7 years to happen at some point. So that's an important thing, and I see this a lot with new founders, particularly tech founders that I kind of mentor and network with. They pick a business idea that they don't really like, but they think it's a way to make some money, and I have to tell them, look, you're going to be doing this for 10 years. Like, pick something that you can stay excited about for at least 5 or 10 years, because that's how long it's going to take.
So the overnight success. So let's jump forward, or we go forward 15 years to GreenPal, which has taken off. And a lot of people look at it and say, like, GreenPal is an overnight success. But as you mentioned, you've got the 15 years of training, experience, learning, mistakes, which came into that process. But brand new business, what was the goal when you started that business?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, starting my first company, I just wanted to make ends meet, and then it kind of grew into like a mission. But with GreenPal, right out the gate, I had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to build something that ultimately one day millions of people would use. So I guess you could say I was swinging for the fences, right out the gate. And maybe because it was my second business, and I heard a good quote the other day to, you know, build your launch pad first, then build your rocket ship. And so a lot of times if you have a super big, grandiose business idea, it might be a better idea to like build a service-based business to a few $1,000,000 and then maybe sell it and then go after the big idea. That's how it's kind of unfolded for me. And so I knew from the start we wanted to build something big. The punch in the stomach was how long it took to get that traction. And when you're building a tech product like GreenPal, if you build it, they will not come. And you come to understand that the hard part is not actually building the software, building the product, or founding the business. The hard part is connecting it with people who need it, and getting people to understand that you exist, and being where people are looking when they are trying to solve the problem that you solve. At least I found out the hard way that that's 10 times harder than just building the damn thing in the first place. And so it took several years to kind of get some momentum going. It felt like pushing on a string for a long time, but I had made a decision that it was my best idea, and I was just going to work on my best idea. And so luckily, I guess I'm not terribly I don't have a whole lot of good ideas. I'm not terribly brilliant, and so I had one good idea, and I just decided to spend as much time as it took on it.
Mm-hmm. So, not bootstrapping, I guess, this time, because you got the sale of the previous business. So what differences did it make to, I guess, hiring people to help you make GreenPal happen?
Yeah, boy, that's a really good question. So first business was self-funded, bootstrap, and believe it or not, the second business is too. And so GreenPal did not raise any outside capital, and my co-founder and I did put in some seed capital, a couple of $100,000, but that ran out pretty quick. That ran out in about 6 months. And neither one of us wanted to go backwards in life. We didn't want to, I didn't ever want to pick up a weed eater ever again. I didn't ever want to have to come home smelling like grass clippings ever again. And that scared me to not screw up the proceeds from the first sale. And so I very intentionally took all of the proceeds from that business and put it in like real estate and things that I couldn't like access. And so the second business, GreenPal, had to kind of sing for its supper, and that was the best decision that we made, because that one piece of the equation kind of course corrected us so many times to focus on one thing, and that's the customer. What are customers saying? Why aren't customers coming back to use the product? What are we doing that's pissing them off? What are we doing that's making them happy? And just always talking to them, because one, we need the sales, but two, we need to know kind of where we're trying to go here. And a lot of times when founders raise money or borrow money, you don't have to talk to pesky customers anymore, at least for a little while. And you don't have to like sit at a coffee table or a kitchen table at somebody's house and watch them use the product and ask them what they liked about it. You don't have to do these like hard, like this, exercises of figuring out where it is you're trying to go. And so self-funding GreenPal was the best decision we ever made. And I don't think we would be here today had we done the traditional thing that tech founders usually do, which is raise a bunch of money and try to like get rich or die trying. For us, it was very much a slow and like pragmatic approach.
So it's a tech company, but you mentioned two key things there, and one of them really builds on a recent episode we've just had published, where we're talking about just because you've got a great product doesn't mean people are going to buy it.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, distribution kills more businesses than product does.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is you really talked about connecting to your customers and understanding what they were wanting from you and what makes them unhappy. How can you make that experience better for the customer? And I think my understanding is you've spent a lot of time and investment in understanding your customers' needs, not just saying, right, we've got a great product, let's find some customers that fit our product. Let's adapt our product to fit what the customers are wanting.
Yeah, it's a mentor once told me, he said, listen to your customers or you will have none. And for me, like that just always stuck in my head. And listen, I don't like getting my butt chewed from customers. I don't like, because some of them are insatiable, and I don't like having to always get negative feedback from people who are pissed off about something that we did. But the reality is you have to do it. You have to do it for a couple of reasons. One, you don't really know, like you have these ideas, of what you think customers want, but you don't really know until you get in the trenches with them. And in the early days, you're kind of doing all of your own customer support because you have to. But then as time goes on, you're making a little bit of money, and you pay customer service reps to handle that for you. And then what happens is there's this weird gap that forms between founder logic, your logic, and the customer logic. And the next thing you know, you wake up one day and like you're not even speaking the same language. They're looking at the problem from a different perspective than you are looking at it, and you're not even on the same page anymore. And so that happened to me with GreenPal, and so what I did to kind of close that gap is I started doing customer support again. We have 13 people that do full customer support full time, and but I'm still doing at least an hour a day, sometimes 2 or 3 hours a day of answering the 1-800 number, doing the live chat, answering email tickets, and I'm still getting insights and still seeing things that I didn't see before, and also getting free R&D about what people wish the product would do that it didn't. Particularly in like today's world of AI, how can we make magic happen for customers? And a lot of my ideas come from just talking to them. And so this stuff seems obvious, but a lot of founders, even of small, traditional, non-digital businesses, get to a point where they don't do customer service anymore. They don't talk to their customers unless they have to. And if you can force yourself, bake it into your routines, bake it into your habits to always be talking to customers, it'll keep you on track.
Now, I think that's great advice, and so many business owners don't do that. They don't talk to their customers. They don't want to interact with their customers, which seems quite fun. It's bizarre. Oh, and sometimes you don't want to talk to a customer because they're going to tell you how things are, and you may not want to hear it, but that's how you improve your product. And speaking of the product, we haven't actually mentioned what GreenPal is. So what did you develop when you've come from a lawn and garden service, you've gone into tech, the company name's GreenPal. What does GreenPal do?
Yeah, so first business was a landscaping company, lawn care company. Second business is the Uber for lawn care companies. So if you need a lawn mowing service, your grass is 3 feet tall, your last guy flaked on you, rather than just calling around, leaving voicemails all day, you just download GreenPal, you pop your address in, and then lawn care services nearby you in your town compete over your lawn care, and they'll submit pricing, and then you can hire the one you want to work with and just pay them right through that. And so you go from 4 feet tall grass to somebody came out and mowed it today without even making a phone call. And around 300,000 people are using it every week in the United States. We want to get that to 1 million in the United States, and then expand in Canada, UK, Australia, and then beyond.
So 300,000 users now. How long has the business been operating?
We've been at this a little over a decade. So the first, a little over 10 years. The first couple years were literally us teaching ourselves how to build software. We tried to delegate the software development. That blew up in our face. And so had to go to YouTube University, learn how to code, and we built the project from scratch ourselves. That took 2 or 3 years. And then after that was trying to hustle up a couple of hundred people to use it. That took 10 times longer than I ever imagined it would. And then we kept growing that number from 100 people to 1,000 to 5,000 to 10, and trying to double that number every couple of months. And now we're at 300,000. And now we're gunning for 1 million.
Right. So some long-term plans for growth, very structured process, listening to customers. Customers are key, that communication. That's how you've been building it. One of the things we haven't mentioned is, and the reason we haven't mentioned it is it's probably not really been there, is the flashy social media, all of that stuff that people think they have to have?
You know, when you're self-funded and you don't have a bunch of money to burn, you start noticing what is fake work and what is not moving the needle. And so a lot of times, there's all these things you think you need to be doing that really don't matter. And in the early days, it doesn't matter what your business is. There's really only two things you need to be doing. It's working on something that solves customers' problem, and then talking to customers and getting them to use that thing you're working on. And that's it. And I think the first 100, maybe even first 1,000 sales need to be hand-to-hand combat, need to be in the trenches with your customer. And then after that, you can start layering on these other things that we think we need. We don't, but I don't believe in the early days you need a flashy social media. You certainly don't need a personal brand or anything like that. You need to be building something that solves problems for customers and then talking to those customers and getting them to use that thing. That's really all you need to be probably spending 2 or 3 years on.
Oh, thank you, Bryan. Bryan, it's been fantastic to hear your journey from one guy and a lawnmower to where you are now with over 300,000 customers. It's really encouraging to hear not just that you've gone from start with one mower to where you are now, and there was no issues. You've told us some of the warts and all. Here are some of the things I've learned, some of the problems that I've had. And the best part is, if you're a listener here, you're probably experiencing some or all of those things right now. Bryan shared some of his experience of how he has dealt with those, managed, survived, thrived, and grown. And we're really grateful that Bryan's come to share that experience with us today. Where do you find out more about Bryan? Well, you go to yourgreenpal.com. And I'm guessing it's available in the App Store.
That's right. Yeah. GreenPal.com, yourgreenpal.com, or download it in the App Store. Anybody want to hit me up, just find me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to reach me.
Fantastic. Look, we're going to share the links to yourgreenpal.com and Bryan's contact details in the show notes, and also on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website, so that you can follow through and find out a bit more about Bryan's incredible journey from one man and a mower to where he is now with 300,000 customers at Your GreenPal. It's been great talking with Bryan, and I hope you've enjoyed that as much as I have talking with Bryan. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your time today, Bryan.
Hey, Paul, thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.